Namaskar, and once again, those who have not been with the other sessions, welcome to this last session for today. And this is going to be a very interesting session, so I welcome that you all stay here. It's going to be about leadership in the Mahabharata. What does it mean today? As we have already been discussing in this previous session, there was this interesting question about whether Rama and Krishna were real, whether it is Itihasa Purana, whether any of this is real. To me, I believe that they still exist because they are in all our hearts. And there is no question of whether they were there or they were not there, because they are here. Whatever is in our mind is what is present. And they have been here forever and ever. And as long as, you know, the hoary lines of history can go back, and it is after all Itihasa Purana. And I did notice that somebody was talking in the previous session about Chanakya, and that Chanakya was written about 700 years later. But Rama and Krishna were written about by people who are a part of those stories. And I don't really, I'm not really worried whether they were stories, whether they happened or they didn't happen. But to me, they are in my mind and they are happening. So we have this session, which is going to be really interesting because we have Andy here, who has written several beautiful books too, but I will allow Aparna to give a detailed introduction to him, and then we will start the session. Aparna?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chakra. The most striking part of Andy Frankel's first interaction with us was his email ID, which is story 108. So he tells us that the Mahabharata and Ramayana are very critical in a world which is spiraling into decline. He will probably talk more about that, but about Andy himself. Andy Frankel was born in Germany in 1947, coincidentally the same year as India got her independence. And he came to America with his parents at the age of 5. He's a multicultural storyteller, author, and a workshop leader. He's the author of Mahabharata, The Eternal Quest, and Hanuman's Quest. Andy is a long-time resident of New Vrindavan community in West Virginia. He was initiated in 1973 and given the name Sankirtan Das. He is a presenter of the Krishna Bhakti tradition and offers Katha, a traditional Vedic format of dramatic storytelling, which includes a sprinkling of spiritual teachings and the chanting of Sanskrit mantras meant to be both engaging as well as enlightening. Andy, we will now start your session. Would you like to say a few words before we commence the interaction?
Yes, I'd like to speak a couple of words. And, you know, if anytime, don't hesitate to pop in. But I want to begin by thanking the Center for a Soft Power and also the Indic Academy for developing these programs and hosting. And I'd like to thank all of the sponsors who are sponsoring these important projects in India. And to help people understand the great contribution of this Vedic culture. And by the way, I'd also like to thank Ashwin for being such a fantastic host and presenting so many different questions and insights in our previous panel discussion. But the importance of this Vedic culture, actually, one of the things in Indian, when I visited India and when I've talked to Indian people, sometimes there's a little bit of a confusion. And I think this confusion arises, and also this is to the great credit of the Indian people. But some of this confusion arises to the 1,000 years that the Indian community, the Vedic community of Sanatan Dharma, has been living under outside influence. And the invasions of India, of course, the first person who tried to invade India is Alexander the Great, but he stopped at the Sindhu River Valley. He didn't go any further, and he was intelligent not to do so. But more recently, about the 9th century, then there have been invasions into northern India. And subsequently, northern India and even central India was occupied. And of course, more recently, within the last, prior to the Indian independence in 1947, for over 200 years, the British occupied India. And the British understood what an exalted culture that they were dealing with. What a profound culture. And so one of the things that they had to do was to undermine that culture. And so there's a lot of confusion about these different scriptural things from those times, that the Indians opened up, but the British in the 19th century opened up over 1,000 educational institutions to indoctrinate the Indian people and to have them look upon their literatures, their scriptures, the Shastra, in a submissive way, in a dismissing way, that, oh, these things are not very important. That now they become submissive to the teachings of the British and the scholarship of the British, rather than to the scholarship of their own literatures, which have been established and have guided the people of India for thousands of years. That's really remarkable. And we wouldn't even be having this Namaste 2020 if it weren't due to the perseverance of the generations of Indians for over 1,000 years who are living through this suppressive outside influence. If they didn't keep their devotion to this exalted philosophy and these exalted stories. You know, people are still connected to these stories in a very wonderful way. Years ago, when I was in India, this is probably 30 years ago, I was out in Bombay, walking the streets of Bombay, and the streets were deserted. It was like out of an apocalyptic movie. Nobody was around. And I only found out later on. I don't know, I don't remember if it was, they had a TV series of, I don't know if it was the Mahabharatha or the Ramayana, but everyone was at home watching the show on television. This is how much exalted and how much connected the Indian people are to their own stories, to these ancient Shastra. You know, the Mahabharatha and the Ramayana, the Puranas, this is referred to as the 5th Veda. And the Vedas themselves, they're also being used by so many scholars nowadays. But the fifth Veda is specifically meant for our time because we're all fascinated by stories. We love stories. You know, we go to the movies and there's so many exciting stories to see in the movies. We read so many novels. People are going to the theater and seeing enactments, dramas on stage. So my own particular background, if I may share about myself for a few minutes, my own particular background, when I was growing up in New York City, I lived in a neighborhood that was actually very diverse. There was Black people and white people. There were Puerto Ricans. There was people from England and Israel. Myself, like I said, I came over to the United States at an early age, when I was 5 years old, from Germany. So I was very fortunate to grow up in a diverse neighborhood with many, many different friends, diverse friends. And now that I can look back upon it, I didn't, of course, appreciate it at the time, but now that I look back upon it, and I can appreciate it so well, that the type of childhood and upbringing that I had, and my parents, they were very universal in their appeal as well. And so in in college, I was majoring in drama and filmmaking. And in the college library, I found a book. It was written in maybe 1914. This is in 1968, 69. I was in college. The book was from 1914, and it was a collection of stories from ancient India. And one of the stories, which I found very much fascinating and appealing, is the story of Yudhisthira and the dog. This is coming out of the Mahabharatha. And I didn't know anything about the Mahabharatha. But this story, was such a beautiful story. And I'd like to share that because, you know, Yudhisthira and his brothers, the Pandavas, they went through so many trials and tribulations. They lived in the forest for so many years. And finally, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, they ruled the kingdom for about 35 years or so. And then one day, Yudhisthira, he put aside the royal crown. He put aside all of the royal cloth, and he wandered around the palace in very simple clothing. And he stopped speaking. He stopped eating. He stopped seeing visitors. And then one night, he left the palace for good. Now his 4 brothers, they were very observant. They were also watching him very carefully, and they followed him into the dead of night. And even Draupadi, their queen, this is interesting that the queen had 5 husbands, but she also followed her husbands into the dead of night. And also they were followed by a stray dog. And they went through the forest, and they went higher and higher into the north regions, into the Himalayan mountains. You know, this is interesting because usually people nowadays are trying to hang on to their possessions till the fag end of their lives. In their 70s and 80s, people are still clutching to their wealth, clutching to their fame and their powers, and they're still running for office. But the Vedic paradigm is that, no, don't clutch until the last end of your life. Leave everything behind. Give up these things. Renounce these things. Leave them into the hands of future generations. And the responsibility of the older generation in the Vedic literature, and in the responsibility, especially of the leaders, are to train up new people who can step forward to assume leadership. So when I talk about leadership, you know, it may sometimes people think that leadership is on the level of political leadership, or there's religious leaders. There's also leaders of industrial complexes and worldwide organizations. There's academic leaders. So there's a leader can be applied on a different levels. But not only that type of a leader, actually we're each, in a sense, we're leading and we're in charge of our own lives. We're also leaders. We also make decisions. We also, each one of us has influence in many, many different ways that we can't even imagine. Nowadays, people are, you know, in a sense, if you look at the internet and at Facebook, people are hammering at each other and trying to exert their influence. But that's not the way of soft power. The Vedic way is the way of soft power. And this way of, you know, you train up people, and when they're trained up, then you step back. That's soft power. You don't have to clutch to the power until the fag end of life. And so Yudhisthira, he had renounced the kingdom even before he left that night. And he and his brothers and their queen journeyed higher and higher into the Himalayan mountains. And they were followed by that dog. But you know, the Himalayan mountains, when you go up there, it's bitter, bitter cold. It's hard to survive. And Draupadi, she was such a fragile person, a fragile lady. She passed away. And one by one, the Pandavas, the four brothers, they each passed away. And at the end, Yudhisthira was alone. But he still was not alone. He was still followed by that dog. And Yudhisthira and the dog, they became the best of friends. The dog watched over Yudhisthira as he slept at night. And then one day, Yudhisthira saw something approaching from the distance, from through the mountains. It was the chariot of King Indra. And that chariot was circling the mountains, and it came right down before Yudhisthira. It didn't even touch the ground. It was hovering before the ground. And so Indra, he said, Yudhisthira, get onto my chariot. I'll take you to the heavens. You know, there's a song here in the West, a Christian song. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for the carry me home. So they have a sense, yes, that swing low, sweet chariot, that chariot that is going to descend from the heavens to take me home. And so here, this is the literal event, that the chariot from the heavens is coming. Indra is appealing to Yudhisthira, get onto my chariot, I'll take you back to the heavens. And Yudhisthira is not interested. And he said, no, you know, I don't want to go any place really without my brothers and without my queen, Draupadi. And Indra said, well, what are you waiting for? Get onto my chariot, I'll take you to the heavens. They're waiting for you at this very moment. And Yudhisthira lights up, and he's getting onto the chariot, and he's followed by the dog. And Indra throws up his hand. Wait, what is this lowly dog? Get away. There's no place in the heavens for a lowly dog. And when Yudhisthira hears this, he gets off of the chariot. And Indra is surprised. He said, Yudhisthira, what are you doing? And he says, well, if this dog can't go, I'm not going either. And Indra is astonished. He said, you are prepared to give up the riches and comforts of heaven for a dog? Yudhisthira, he says, yes. And this is one of the qualities of a leader, that they're not just worried about their friends. They're not just, but everyone in all of the citizens in their kingdom. The animals are also citizens. The trees are citizens. Everyone is a citizen of the king. And so this dog has been very loyal to Yudhisthira. They've developed a relationship. Yudhisthira is not going to abandon that dog, even for all of the comforts in heaven. So this is the type of sacrifice that is required from leadership today. Where is the leader that is making such sacrifice, saying, no, I don't care about my own comforts. I don't care about, yes, I have my friends and my family. I have a deep relationship with them. If I must sacrifice that, I'll sacrifice that for one of my lowest citizens. So this is the type of a sacrifice that the leadership has to make. You know, that word sacrifice is not in the vocabulary of most of the leaders of this world today. Most of the leaders are seen as people who are trying to take advantage of their exalted position and the influence and the power that they have. And so there are many, many different examples in the Mahabharatha of the type of leadership that is required today. That is why the Mahabharatha is such an important book. And even my guru, Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he came to the West. He founded this Hare Krishna movement. And so it was a very extraordinary achievement. Here he had no money. He didn't even have money to buy a ticket on a boat. He knew one lady, Sumati Murarji. At that time, she owned the Scindia Shipping Company. And he came to her with a very unusual request. He said, Mataji, you own the shipping company. You have freighters going to different corners of the world. Please let me take a freighter to New York City. Of course, Prabhupada wasn't really concerned about going anywhere himself. But way back in 1936, his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his guru, just before he passed away, asked Prabhupada, whatever you have learned from me, you please present this ancient teaching of Sanatan Dharma, the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, to the people in the Western world. And so Prabhupada was thinking, let me somehow try to achieve that. But of course, he didn't act on it right away. Years later, actually, Prabhupada, he began to have dreams. His guru was showing up in the dream and saying, well, when are you going to follow my instruction? And so finally, Prabhupada, he's 70 years old. He had no money, and he came to America. And when he got off the boat, he didn't know whether to turn right or whether to turn left. This is another form of great leadership, that Prabhupada was a spiritual leader, and he was an ambassador of this Sanatan Dharma coming from India with this precious gift. But I'm wondering if
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I see many articles and many people today a little confused about karna. they feel that not enough justice was done to Karna, who was a very good person. So what is your impression about the uh, persona of Karna?
No, thank you for asking that, because Karna actually is one of the great tragic figures of the Mahabharata. You know, he is Kunti's oldest son, but Kunti abandoned Karna. She was not married, so she had Karna and then abandoned him, and Karna grew up in a very humble environment. So Karna always felt a sense of greatness, how to achieve that. You know, he felt that in his heart, that he had a special position somewhere. And so when he came to Hastinapura and met the Pandavas and met the Kauravas, Duryodhana, he saw Karna's great potential. He saw that Karna would be an extraordinary ally. So he bought Karna's blessings by making him a king. He gave Karna a little kingdom of his own. And so Karna now was indebted to Duryodhana. And so you have, there's this conflict between the 5 Pandavas and the Kauravas, Duryodhana and his 99 brothers. So there's this constant conflict going on. Who is going to get the kingdom? Duryodhana was hoping that he somehow or other wanted to pull the rug from underneath the Pandavas and acquire the kingdom. So he was looking. He's a great strategist, and he was looking for alliances. And he saw that Karna was a valuable ally in undermining the Pandavas. And so unfortunately, that Karna, he was such an extraordinary personality, an extraordinary leader, still he was hungry for acknowledgement. And who would acknowledge him? Duryodhana. And so his heart went out to Duryodhana. In a sense, he was sold out. He was sold out to Duryodhana, and he became Duryodhana's ally. And even later on, when he found out his actual positions, he did not abandon Duryodhana. This is the type of friendship, and this is the type of leadership that Karna had, that you don't abandon your allies. But of course, on Duryodhana's level, in one sense, he took advantage of Karna's loyalty. But so this is why I say that Karna is such an extraordinary figure in the Mahabharata. He is a pivotal figure, but he's a tragic figure because he is not really, acknowledged. He is not really honored the way he should be. And so in one sense, we're walking around in our own lives, and we also have, people, they're not being, when they go to the office or maybe when they go home, they're making such a great contribution, but maybe they're not acknowledged the way they should feel, that they should be recognized for their contribution, acknowledged in one way or another, at least. So people need that acknowledgement. We all need to be acknowledged for the contributions we're making, whatever little contribution we can make. And so we all need that acknowledgement.
But,
and therefore,
sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
But do you think that Karna taking that one reason of loyalty sacrificed himself to Adharma?
For Adharma? Is that what you're saying?
Adharma.
Well, that's a interesting question. In one sense, this is the distinction between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Pandavas stand for Dharma, and the Kauravas, in one sense, stand, in one sense, people acknowledge that Duryodhana was not a bad leader. He was a competent leader, but still he was overwhelmed by qualities that were distasteful. Just to give you an example, that Dronacharya, who was the teacher of the Pandavas and the Kauravas, when they were his students, he understood that out of the group, that either Duryodhana would assume power or Yudhisthira. And he asked Duryodhana, go out to the city of Hastinapura and find someone and bring someone back to me who you think is better than you. And then he asked Yudhisthira that go out into the kingdom and find someone who is lower than you. And so Duryodhana, he was walking around looking here and there. He saw some Brahmins and he said, well, Brahmins, I'm better than the Brahmins. I'm greater. The Brahmins are coming to me for protection. And then he goes through the marketplaces and sees that people are selling their wares. And he said, I'm protecting the merchants. And so wherever he looks, he sees himself as the greatest. Everyone is under his protection. No, he is the greatest and the most powerful. In the meantime, Yudhisthira is looking around and he sees the Brahmins. And he said, the Brahmins, they're keepers of the wisdom. They're supplying the wisdom to our citizens. I honor the Brahmins. They are much greater than me. And then he's going to the merchants and he's seeing, oh, look at these merchants. They are all supplying the goods that are required for the citizens of the kingdom. I am their servant. The leader must be the servant to the people. And then he's walking around, and that day happens to be a fast day. No one should eat, no one should drink even. And then Yudhisthira, as he's wandering through the city, he comes to someone. They're taking a bucket of water or 2 buckets of water, and they're dumping them in the well, and they're taking the water out of the well. And Yudhisthira says, aha, here is someone lower than me. This person is taking the water on a fast day. No one should eat or drink on a fast day. But then Yudhisthira sees that this man is not taking the water for himself. He is bringing the bucket to his thirsty horses, and they are drinking. And so Yudhisthira thinks, just look what I've done. I'm so arrogant that I think that this man is lower than me. I must humbly apologize. And so Duryodhana comes back and he tells Dronacharya, I looked hard all over the city, but I couldn't find anyone greater than me. And then Yudhisthira also comes back and he said, I looked hard all over the city, but to tell you the truth, I couldn't find anybody lower. I am the lowest. And so this is an important quality. To uphold the Dharma, we have to be in a very humble mood. The Dharma is the most important thing. And that's why I had mentioned earlier, and when this Namaste 2020, the first session that began a few weeks back, Hari Kira Prabhu, I think I'm pronouncing his name properly, Hari Kira, he began this Namaste 2020 by saying that actually we all have a contract with Sanatan Dharma. Yes, this contract, we're obliged to live in the Dharma. And so, you know, this word Dharma is a very, very nuanced word. There's many, many different nuanced meanings to Dharma. One of the meanings is, what is your religion? Also, what is your occupation? What is your social responsibility to society, to your family? This is all encompassed by Dharma. Dharma also means morality, also means law and justice. And so this is when I was very happy to hear Hari Kiran when he explained that, yet this is this gathering, this celebration, the basis of everything is Sanatan Dharma. So I was very happy to hear that.
Can I ask you a question, Andy?
Please do.
In the Ramayana, Valmiki starts off saying, you know, as much as we have since we are on the word dharma, as much as the dharma of the characters, we also have the dharma of the writer. So he gives us, you know, certain rules and, you know, certain qualities of being a writer. So one of which, the predominant one, he says, is a writer must only write what is truthful. So given today's scenario, especially in the media and in journalism and in news reporting and other forms of writing, where a lot of information is not reported correctly, a lot of stories are not told as they should be. There's no ethics on the you know, which drive writers, especially those who are talking about the world that is the things in the world that are happening now. A lot of the stories in the media in the West about India, do they adhere to this dharma of the writer? What are your thoughts on the writer's dharma?
Well, you know, this is the problem, that you know, there's so much the misunderstanding about the culture of India, and there's so much misunderstanding going around in political and religious circles, because when we talk about dharma, it's explained that dharma is compared to the cow or to the bull. And just like the bull or the cow is standing on four legs, the dharma is also on four legs. One of those legs is the leg of truthfulness. In this age, that leg is suffering. There's other legs, the leg of cleanliness, the leg of compassion. Where are you going to find these things? Compassion nowadays. How are people keeping clean even? People don't, here in the, you know, in a cultured civilization, when you get up, the first thing to do in the morning is to brush your teeth and take a shower, to cleanse yourself, and also to do some meditation. So that cleanliness is coming from within and also external, internal and external cleanliness. And the compassion, maybe I'm compassionate to my friend, but I'm not compassionate to a stranger. So the Indian culture, the Sanatan Dharma, the Vedic culture, even if your enemy comes to your door, then you greet him. You invite him into your home as your friend, even if someone that you don't like comes to your door. And so this type of things have to be, there has to be a system of education to educate people on the qualities of leadership, on what is meant as truthful or cleanliness or compassion. And the last leg of dharma is sacrifice, making some sacrifice, some austerity for the benefit of others. You know, everybody's making some sort of a sacrifice, actually, when they come down to it. You know, the parents are making a sacrifice for the children. And when the children reach a certain age, then they have to go to school. Who wants to go to school, sit there? But that's also a sacrifice. And in our lives, you know, the real person, the real citizen, and the real upholder of Dharma, he or she understands how these sacrifices in life are important. These are very important examples. So where are the leaders who are giving such examples? You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that what great men or powerful men are doing, then the rest of the citizens, they're also imitating. And so where are the great and powerful men who are actually upholding the truth, who are upholding cleanliness and compassion, and also who are making sacrifice, just like another story from the Mahabharatha. You know, at one time, the Pandavas, they were living in a house in Ekachakra. They were in disguise. They were wandering as Brahmins. So the 5 brothers and also their mother, Queen Kunti, and they were living, this gentleman in Ekachakra took them in. They were strangers to him, and no one even knew that who the Pandavas were. They were such extraordinary, powerful people. No one knew in Ekachakra. They were living there in disguise. And so one day, Kunti was at home with the family, and the family were in the next room, and they had a great dire disaster, a great calamity in their lives. You know, this is going on actually all over the world. People, all of a sudden, they find themselves in the midst of some dire difficulty. And so this difficulty of this family, because there was a local Rakshasa, an evil personality that lived in the woods. And he demanded that every month, someone he wanted to have a human sacrifice. So to keep the peace, then the whole town of Ekachakra, they decided, okay, each month a different family is chosen, and they have to decide from amongst themselves who is going to sacrifice themselves to be eaten by this local Rakshasa. And so now it's the turn of this family, and they're crying in the next room, and Kunti hears this. She can't help herself. She immediately goes there and says, well, what's going on? And they explain. And she asks them, well, what about the king? What? Will not the king correct this injustice? And they tell her, oh, the king doesn't care about us. Actually, this Ekachakra town, we're really not supplying that much taxes to the king. So he doesn't care what happens to this town. And so Kunti is infuriated. She's also royalty. She's a queen. But she's not the queen of that land. But still, she wants to get involved and correct the injustice. And she sends her son. She said, your family, don't worry. None of you will have to make a sacrifice. My son, Bhima, will take care of it himself. And so Bhima goes out, and of course, he kills the Rakshasa, and everyone is relieved in the town. And ever since that time, because they all thought that the Pandavas were Brahmins, and ever since that time, they had a yearly festival to honor the Brahmins, because this Brahmin, that no one knew that a Brahmin could be so powerful, but he went out and he killed this Rakshasa to save the community. So this is the responsibility of the leadership. They have to be the first ones to step on the line. They are the first ones who make a sacrifice and correct the injustices, which is also one of the great injustices now is all of this untruthfulness that is being spread. This is because of the Kali Yuga.
Can I ask a question, Andy?
Please do.
In Valmiki's Ramayana, in the Balakanda, there is a wonderful description about how the city of Ayodhya has been planned, and there they have there he has described how the ideal citizen should be. Because today we hear a lot about leaders not fulfilling their obligation, but as citizens, don't you think that even what is there in the Ramayana says how an ideal citizen should be? What are your views on that?
Well, you know, the city of Ayodhya is in northern India. And in those days, of course, the Ramayana, it is said by the sages and the great Vedantists that the story of the Ramayana is about 2 million years old. And so at that time, even if it was thousands of years ago, there was this gorgeous city in northern India. And the dimensions of the city was about 96 miles by 24 miles. And the city had beautiful houses and parks, and it had a very wonderful environment. This is all explained in the Ramayana. And so the citizens, there's a responsibility that comes when much is given, then much is expected. The citizens that have an obligation to maintain the Dharma. The Dharma is protecting everyone, all of the citizens, and at the same time, the citizens have to protect the Dharma. But what happens when the majority of the population doesn't even know about the Dharma? It doesn't even have any clue as to what the Dharmic principles are. And this is an interesting thing, because the Pandavas, who are the epitome of Dharma, there's only 5 of them. And the Kauravas, who was technically the epitome of Adharma, there's 100 of them. So, this is suggested that even if only 5% of the population was following the Dharma, that would be enough, a tipping point, to actually influence the entire society. So those people who, especially the people of India, who are familiar with these things, they need to act, and they need to broadcast, educate people in general. This education is sorely needed all over the world. And that's why Prabhupada, he served as such a great ambassador, because what I'm speaking is only by the grace of my guru, Srila Prabhupada, who presented this Sanatan Dharma all over the world to help people all over the world. And this is what we need to do. Educate people.
Thank you so much, Andy. I think we've come to the end of our session. It's, time just flew by with these these beautiful stories that you have given us from, our Puranas. And it's wonderful to see that, you have, I should say, given beautiful explanations for our leadership with examples from the Puranas. And I hope that, schooling systems will here actually start looking very seriously at the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So once again, thank you very much. And
can I mention another point? Because one of my guiding books says Mahatma Gandhi, his guiding book, Bhagavad Gita. This is Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. This is one of my guiding books. And we all need books and people. We need to surround ourselves with books and with people who are going to inspire us. We need each other. So we need to inspire one another.
Yes,
And I'd just like to finish personally, and then I'll hand it back over to you. Just like I did in the last program, I finished with the chanting of Hare Krishna prayer, because Prabhupada explained that this is the great prayer of peace. And so, you know, in the Vedas, of course, there are 20,000 mantras. There's so many mantras we can take, but this is called the Maha Mantra. So please, and if you, I'll just say it a few times, and if you'd like to join me, anyone, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it's, you know, it's said in the Vedas that if something is important, then you say it 3 times. So I've given the mantra 3 times, and thank you for your patience and for your kind words and kindly allowing me to participate in this wonderful event of yours. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Namaskar. Thank you.
Hare Radhe. Namaste.
We look forward to all of you being with us this Friday. We have a session at 6 o'clock. It's called Center Stage for Music. It's about Raga and Rasa. We have the greats from the music field. We have Sudha Raghunathan, Vidushi Sudha Raghunathan, and we have Sri Suresh Vyas, and we have Dr. Ritvik Sanyal, all of them the greats of music, and they will be in conversation with Lakshmi Sriram, and it will be about Raga and Rasa. So do join us this Friday, and our last weekend is this coming up on the 5th and 6th of September, and we look forward to all of you being with us. Thank you. Namaskar. Shubharatri for people in India, and a good day to people in the other countries in the world. Namaskar.